We continue to monitor Hurricane Milton. Let's check in with meteorologist Hannah Gard with an update.
Thanks, Olivia. We have our latest cone for Milton from the 10 a.m. advisory. The winds increased slightly by 5 miles per hour to 150 mile per hour wind speed. Still a Category 4 storm. It's just shy of that Category 5. But it's been re-strengthening a bit because it's moving away from the Yucatan, and we've completed eye wall replacement. But even so, the National Hurricane Center is still not saying that this gets up to Category 5 strength again. It's just shy of that. By this evening, we're still at 150, and then we start to see some weakening because it's going to encounter a not as conducive environment, high wind shear and some drier air, which will be helpful with the category, but it doesn't really matter at this point if we see some weakening because it's going to expand the wind field. So that just makes for more widespread impacts for Florida as this makes landfall. So we are expecting landfall near Tampa, that right up the center line there, but just north of Tampa down to Fort Myers is the cone right now, and small wobbles are going to really impact where we see the worst storm surge with this because it's going to fall on the southern side of where this makes landfall as the winds push inland there. Then it maintains strength as a Category 2 toward Orlando, so we'll see widespread impacts there by Thursday morning, and then it will move offshore and we'll see that making its way into the Atlantic. But right now we're seeing that re-strengthening because look at the eye. We're starting to actually be able to see right down the center again. It's clearing out a little bit, but it is somewhat lopsided. We're seeing a lot of the convection on the southern edge of this and not wrapping around quite as much as it was. But what we'll see happening now that the eye is trying to clear out is we could see that convection expanding again. So we'll have to watch. This could re-strengthen, but yesterday was really the peak. We got to 180 on the wind speeds, and we've been on that downward trend since the eye wall replacement began. So now we're seeing a little bit of a bump back up. Yesterday, the pressure got to 897. That is in the big leagues here with the strongest storms on record in the Atlantic Basin, just behind 4 other storms, including Rita, the Labor Day storm, Gilbert, Wilma, all of these almost 20 years ago at the most recent. So this is a historic storm. Hurricane Hunter's still flying around in there. We've seen major hurricane winds in the last couple of pass-throughs, but again, they're still waiting to see if this will actually really re-strengthen, and they're not forecasting that this gets to Category 5 again. But look at this pass-through. We saw 166 on the surface winds. Now sometimes that can be a little bit higher than it actually is, but that's still really close to Cat 5, and we're seeing another pass-through right now. So far, 137, so we'll see what they find out there. But we're expecting it to move over this area here where we have anomalously warm waters. That's called the loop current. It kind of moves up from the Caribbean through parts of the Gulf. And then right offshore of Florida, we also have anomalously warm waters. So will the bad environment hinder it that much when opposing the warm waters? That's what we have yet to see. But you can see all this wind shear. This is a high level of wind shear across northern Florida that it's going to be encountering, and that's why we see that weakening. So looking at the winds, it's going to go from this very small size that we have today. Look at it compared to the Yucatan. It's a very small wind field that we have those hurricane force winds. This starts to expand. If I hold my hands there, you can see that the pink is really growing larger prior to landfall. And that's why the weakening is not necessarily a good thing. It's going to lead to wider impacts. And where this makes landfall is very important. You can see the southern side is where the winds are going perpendicular to the shoreline. And if we have a wider wind swath, that's going to pile a lot of wind heading inland into those areas in central western Florida. So we're going to keep watching this. They have hurricane warnings in effect across the entire peninsula for those areas, all the way up into parts of southern Georgia. We have those tropical storm watches, and down the peninsula as well. We're seeing those tropical storm warnings. Storm surge 10 to 15 feet. This is catastrophic, life-threatening storm surge. Today is the last day that folks have to evacuate. If you have family, friends there, this is going to be worse than Helene because of the trajectory of approach. We could even see those areas that are just south of the center line or the eye wall coming inland. They could see up to 20 feet of storm surge in some areas. We'll also see that heavy rainfall. This is up to 10 inches in that heaviest swath. That's mainly on the northern side, though, of the eye. Here's the good news. We're watching something else in the long term. This is going to be a very strong cold front coming down, in the later half of the weekend through the start of next week. And that's going to actually bring us maybe a real fall feel that we haven't had. So we just got to get through this week where we have somewhat nice temperatures in the mid 80s. We actually heat up a little bit before that front comes through, and then we'll see some nicer conditions. We have clear skies out there. Temperatures a little cooler because look at the dew points, 50s across the area. That's allowed for a mass cool off, and we're seeing almost 10-degree cooler temperatures in most places, 60s, 70s, and later today we'll only get to those mid 80s. So nice weather for us, but we're definitely thinking about our friends there in Florida. Back to you.